أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum. When we were introducing Dr. Ron Daniels, we did mention also that he's a former director of the Center for Constitutional Rights right here. We should never forget that. And he was a prime organizer of the 72 Gary, Indiana political convention. It transformed the role of African Americans in electoral politics. That was his baby. He said, I want to mention that, we need to know when we have victory. A couple of things very quickly. Number one, as Dr. Ramadan pointed out, and this is part of, we have a thing now we call Black Muslim English, where we've started coining terms and phrases, and this phenomena of the acceptance of Islam amongst Americans of African descent in huge numbers, and it's Dr. Beverly McLeod who points out that Al-Hajj Talib Abdur-Rashid, Allah have mercy on him, that his life and work was a historical dividing line for Islam in America. That after his time, there was an explosion of acceptance of Islam in the African American community. So one of the things, picking up on Dr. Ramadan's first point with that English, is that we don't talk about conversion, we talk about reversion. Somebody asks you, are you a convert? No, I'm a revert. And we're speaking not only about the fact that anywhere from 10 to 25% of our people who were brought here during slavery were Muslims, and that white supremacy, targeted them not only because they were black, but also because they were Muslim. And so this idea of conversion and reversion is very important, because as Dr. Ramadan said when he spoke about, the tactic of oppressors of negating you and denying you, and then, resistance to that. In the case of Al-Hajj Talib, his resistance was based on his origin. He started off in life within the context of his family with a positive self-image. The family had values, same values that people associate him having acquired in the Nation of Islam. No, after he reverted and went back to his family values from the Garvey movement, education was a high value in the little family. I remember seeing an interview with our late brother Gil Noble with one of the older brothers of Al-Hajj Talib, I forget which one it was. Wilford. And Wilford said, I used to visit Malcolm in prison. And I would tell him, brother, have you lost your mind? Don't you know what we stand for as a family? We are about education in this family. We're about upliftment in this family. So he was calling him back to who he was before he became Big Red. And his attraction for the Nation of Islam was because the Nation of Islam, within the context of black religion, was the current form or revivification of the Garvey movement, which was again his origins. It's very important for us to understand that. Very important for us to understand he started off as a child wanting to be a lawyer. And it was his teacher discouraging that. That would be careful. All right, so what happened was, as with a lot of our youth, when their genius manifests and then the oppressor frustrates that genius, then they become rebels of another kind. You all have read that paper about the revolutionary rebellion of the Zoot Suit and all of that kind of thing. It's fascinating, fascinating paper. Hajj Talib Abdur-Rashid was not about violence. He was about self-defense. There's a big difference between being violent and advocating violence and advocating self-defense. Violence is what's American. When you talk about you not being American, as Imam Abdullah Al-Amidi, the transformed H. Rap Brown. When he was Rap Brown, he said, and I quote, "Violence is as American as cherry pie." So if he would really been American, he would have advocated violence. Oppression has always been violent in America. Just last weekend, I was at a meeting right here in New York City of Muslims from Bangladesh. All hell's broken loose in Bangladesh now. The government has gone really berserk. They're rounding up religious leaders, imams, sheikhs, women, jailing them, putting them through kangaroo courts, and the young people are rioting in the street. So I was at a briefing that was being conducted by the lawyer that's representing Jamaat Islami in Bangladesh right now, and he pointed out, he said, we're in a real dilemma here. Somebody has to get to our young people and say to them that you rioting in the street is not helping the cause of the people who are being locked up. Because then the government just turns around and says, well, see, this is the problem here. They're violent, they're criminals, and so we're just engaged in actions to contain them. And as I was sitting in the meeting, listening to that, I said to myself, wow, man, somebody needs to show them eyes on the prize. How black people in America dealt with that. Dealt with that dilemma of violent versus nonviolent tactics in struggle. Earlier today, I was at a meeting, speaking of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I was at a meeting at 1 Corinthians Baptist Church in Harlem. And I was listening to the pastor there, Pastor Michael Walround. And he said that, what's today? Today is Wednesday? This past Thursday. This past Sunday, that Harry Belafonte was at the church. And he said that after the service, that he's talking with Harry Belafonte. And Harry Belafonte said the day before Dr. Martin Luther King's martyrdom, Brother Elder Bailey speaks about the day before Madam Shabazzi's martyrdom. So Harry Belafonte said the day before King was killed, that they're having a strategic meeting in Harry Belafonte's house. And they're all sitting around talking, strategizing, said that Dr. King was sitting in the corner on a couch in a very funky mood. Wasn't, up. So Belafonte said, he later asked him, Dr. King, what's going on? So he said, Dr. King said to him, well, it's good what we're doing. This is all good. We're grateful to God. He said, but I'm really having second thoughts about this integration strategy, he said, because I'm really afraid that we're calling our people to integrate into a burning house, he said. Wow. And by the way, integration, that's the voluntary process. The process from the other side is called assimilation. And we need to remember that. What Dr. Ramadan said about, a prime principle of Malik Shabazz, we want to be respected, not accepted. Well, I just want to say, I'm looking at the audience. I see a lot of young people here. I see a lot of people who are involved in our current struggle against the NYPD. And their unjust surveillance of the Muslim community. And I want to say, from the vantage point you know, as an African American involved in that struggle, that this is one of the problems that we're having right now. That we have Muslims who want to be accepted as opposed to being respected. And that's a problem. It's creating a problem of people collaborating. They collaborated because they want to be accepted. No, we don't want to be accepted by you. You know, we want to be respected, demand to be respected. Elijah Muhammad was a master of what's called reverse race psychology. Okay? That's what he was doing. He wasn't a teacher of religion. One of my favorite quotes of his. Elijah Muhammad said, quote, "I'm not teaching Islam," unquote. He said, "I'm trying to clean these people up so they'll be able to accept Islam." That's a major difference. That's not a well-known quote, except amongst his followers. Well, what he was a master of reverse racial psychology. You know, he said, okay, you attribute divinity to whiteness, I attribute divinity to blackness. You make it negative, I make it positive. Now you deal with it. Okay? And that has its own merit. Hajj. Yes, as Dr. Mahmoud said, when Al-Hajj Talib Abdur-Rashid, when he went on Hajj, first thing he set foot on the soil, they arrested him. Two things about that. One was they arrested him because they didn't believe he was who he was. Malcolm X, oh man, please, sit down. You're Muslim? Yeah. And you're wanting the test for the Arabic? You know Surah Al-Fatiha? Yes, he says. All right, well, let me hear it. He says it in English. Why? Because in the Nation of Islam, they always recited Fatiha, but they did it in English. Well, let me hear it in Arabic. Oh, I can't do it. I'll sit down with you. And he was there for 4 days while they had to locate President Mohammed Faisal, who came and said, man, this is Malcolm X. What are you all doing? Oh, that's really him? You know, that's very, very important. Second, Hajj, Epiphany. The point that Dr. Ramadan was making about the misrepresentation of Malik Shabazzi's Epiphany. And all you have to do is listen to what they call the last message. It's right there, he mentions it. He said he noticed, he started thinking of whiteness, American whiteness, as an attitude, as what we call a social construct. So he starts looking at this whole thing.
A mental illness.
I have a 2-volume book at home in my library. It's called The Invention of the White Race. It is not a book of Yakub's theory. It's called The Invention of the White Race by Theodore Allen. And in the book, he describes how, in America, how they invented the white race. And why? Media and homogenization. If you want to know how white America really felt about Malcolm X, go back and pull up the archival articles that were in all the major news outlets after he was killed. When I was in about 6th or 7th grade one day, out of curiosity, I went to the library and I pulled out what Time magazine had to say. It's the worst, most hate-filled invective that you could ever see in journalism. You should read it because now we got Malcolm X stamp and all of that. And you should go back and read that and in real time. That's right, in real time. And again, as Dr. Ramadan said, and it's the same thing with Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X here, what I call homogenization. You know, they want to homogenize them to make them palatable. This is almost finished here. 3 more points. The universal and the particular. I constantly tell my students at the mosque, the universal does not negate the particular, and the particular does not negate the universal. And I want to say to Muslims that we need to stop getting that confused. When you come to the Mosque of Islamic Brotherhood, I preach universal principles from a particular reality. And I defy anybody to tell me that I'm violating the universality of Islam because I talk primarily about what's affecting black people and what affects us in America and what we are up against and what Islam posits as a solution for those problems. And we have people who come to Friday service, everybody knows how I preach. They know what I'm focused on. We have people who are not African Americans who come and who learn something, I think. And then majority. It's the minority who are the oppressors. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a minority oppressing the majority. The 1% and the 99%. That's what we're up against. And they take and flip it in order to confuse people. As Malik Shabazz said, they make the perpetrator the victim and the victim the perpetrator. So when the AP busted Kelly and the NYPD, Ray Kelly's response, we are under attack. He said, those are a quote, a direct quote. We are under attack. In other words, the NYPD is the victim. No, you're not, man. Cut that out, man. And we're not going to allow you to get away with that. And lastly, a quote from Malik Shabazz. I think it's very, whenever I talk about him, people around me, they know, I always say, at first, when I was younger, I used to say Malcolm X. Then maybe around in my middle 20s, I started just saying Al-Hajj Shabazz. And I would do it purposely. Because I found myself constantly listening to people who wanted to highlight him being Malcolm X and negate him being Al-Hajj Shabazz. As you said, they want to negate those last couple of years. And now I say Al-Hajj Shabazz Malcolm X. Why? Because of the statement of Malik Shabazz. He said, quote, I can see the video running in my mind. He's at a press conference. Someone and a reporter asked him two questions. He said, number one, he said, I know she has a beard now. Yeah, I have a beard. Does the beard have religious significance? He was asked. He gave an answer to that. He said, well, what about your name? Are you just going to call yourself now, Malik Shabazz? And by the way, he was calling himself Malik Shabazz before he went to Hajj. It's another thing. If you read he wrote a letter of Shahada, I have a copy of it, and he signed it Malik El-Shabazz. So they asked him, well, you're just going to call yourself that and no longer call yourself Malcolm X? His answer, he said, I will always be Malcolm X.
That's right.
I will always be Malcolm X. And so in our looking at the whole human being, as Dr. Ramadan said, we need to remember all of this. We need to remember, you talk about, Muslims don't like to use the word jihad. They've been intimidated into not using the word jihad. Well, other people have been intimidated into not using the term revolutionary. Right. You know what I mean? Oh, no, you don't want to. I'm a reformist. I'm not a revolutionary. No, someone will be revolutionary. I'm not casting aspersions on anyone. But if Al-Hajj Shabazz was around today, I do not think that the epitome of his life's ministry would be for him to have a TV show. You understand? He was a revolutionary. And revolutions, as he said, change things, overturns things. A revolution is not a 360-degree rotation. As Sheikh Tawfiq used to say, revolution is 180 degrees. And that's what we're still striving for. Thank you.